Cyril, Petty Harbor is a place not known for bad weather and strong tides and heavy seas, but it seems that you got your own the last few days. How many people would you say are affected or have been affected by the latest storm?
There's about 100 fishermen affected in this storm.
And how many do you have in total here in the settlement?
We have at least 150 fishermen here.
Now, would you say there's any one part of the harbor that's been damaged any more than the other part?
Yes, the south side of the harbor was hardest hit. South side of the harbor.
When did the storm actually start?
The storm started, sir, well, actually the sea was up for at least 2 weeks. But on Friday, January the 28th I think it was, the wind got out to the southeast, got further out and threw the sea right in the harbor, right straight in.
When the sea actually did start doing the damage, how long did it last, and when was all the damage finished?
Well, all was finished around 11 o'clock, I would say.
Was there anything you could do at all to save it in the dark?
No, sir. All we could do was just stand away and look on. It was too dangerous to go near anything.
Let's talk a bit about the damage, Cyril. Was there anything other than the stages, which the damage is quite extensive there? Was there anything lost, like engines and gear and this sort of thing?
There was about 40 to 50 engines lost, I imagine. Although some of them have been salvaged. But I wouldn't say they're in very good condition.
We noticed earlier that the men, in fact, were doing a bit of salvage work on grapelins and this sort of thing, and a few moorings, and they were picking up the sticks. But do you think that it would be a good idea to start building again?
Well, this past 2 weeks we've been salvaging what wood we can, and moorings and grapelins for traps. And I would say that would be a good idea. At least we wouldn't have to go into the woods and get that much.
Do you think that you can build this place up in time for the coming fishing season?
That is our biggest problem. No matter what the government take on to do, they're not going to be able to get us ready for this season, not for fishing. And I think we have to do a lot on our own to give us a chance to get fishing this spring.
Cyril, do you think there's anything the men can do in the way of temporary repairs to get through the next coming the trap season and the fishing season?
Our biggest problem, we have no place to moor up the boats. We only got one wharf left here. One wharf.
You said the major damage was on the south side, and down here in the gut too, you've lost a big
up in
stage.
the bottom of the harbor, yeah. These were our longest stages up here. These were 700 to 800 feet long.
How many men would you say were accommodated by these stages in the gut?
I would say up here in the bottom of the harbor there's about 50 men involved in these stages. Yesterday Mr. Cashin was out here and Mr. Granger, and they have a bright picture for Petty Harbor now. As far as I know, we're going to get some dredging down here and a couple of breastworks built, as far as I know.
It was really quite a surprise when we arrived in Petty Harbor and saw the great change that had been brought about in a few weeks. It was the first time that Charlie Granger had ever visited the community, and he perhaps didn't get the full impact of it. I was told that on the day after this all happened, it took hours to get in and out of Petty Harbor because people came to look at the damage. It indeed was quite extensive. Mr. Whitten's property, the gentleman who was showing us around, was severely damaged, and so too were the properties of at least 50 other fishermen, and others experienced more minor losses. What we hoped to do is in this center of the harbor where there had been these community stages, is to do a proper kind of dredging job, if that's technically feasible, and then reconstruct around the harbor the kind of facilities that are perhaps more modern and more advantageous in today's kind of fishery. The fishermen of this community, of course, have quite a tradition as really craftsmen, and it's going to be a problem to provide the kind of public facilities which will allow, if you will, their sort of individual ways to continue. And it's this that's going to be the real discussion over the next few months between the fishermen and the officials. The same problem exists, of course, in other communities, and after leaving Petty Harbor, Charlie Granger visited Bay Bulls and also the Battery. The Battery was probably the other area that was most severely hit.
Ray, can you recall in your lifetime any storm having the same effects as the one we've had during the past couple of weeks?
No, there haven't been nothing since I've been around here. Anything handy to that.
How many people did it affect, do you think? How many people from within St. John's and the crew members who fish out of the battery in Southside in the summertime?
Well, at least as offhand, it wouldn't be under 100. I'd say close on 100 people would be put out of a livelihood if we don't go fishing anymore.
Now, when you talk about the fishermen of St. John's, you usually break them down into a couple of segments. You got your outer battery, the south side, and then way up west. Was there one segment hurt any more than another?
I would say the south side and the outer battery being about the same. I think probably every fisherman in that area has lost practically considerably. Some lost more than others. More fellas have lost just a small lot, more fellas have lost very heavy.
Where would you say most of it was done to the stages themselves?
Oh, well, mostly stages. On this side, for instance, I think there's 7 or 8 or 9 boats or something. A number of dories, a number of engines. Most every stage was affected, but mostly stage heads, sunken wharfs, and several stores. Now, I think it was something competing to that on the south side. I don't know really on the south side offhand, but I know there are several stores and there are several stages, several engines gone on the south side. I know one man over there, Mr. Garland, has lost practically everything he had, except his twine. But Mr. Wareham is still heavier than him. He's lost everything, as far as I can understand, only his boat. His engine is gone, his traps, his moorings, his nets, whatever he had, it all went with one bang.
Ray, if you look at the battery from here, you'll probably won't see too much damage.
No, that's the way, from the way we're looking at it. We want to get down probably more on the waterfront. But then anyone that's not used to the battery, haven't been out here much, they practically say there's not much damage at all.
Well, how, for instance, would you be able to go ahead and prove that there has been damage here? Have you the remnants of the old stages and that someplace?
Oh, yes, there's some photos around here down through the years will give a person a very good idea what it was like before the storm. But as today here now, as you can see, all of here is cliff. Well, right there they were all wharfs, stages. But now it's all left there, now it's a cliff.
Where is the debris? It's scattered outside the harbor and down the other end, maybe?
Well, now, up to this last day, we've always had wind east and northeast. But as yesterday, the wind shifted from the westward, and there's quite a lot of stuff went out last night. Going out yesterday evening, but I guess there's a lot under pier, Harvey's Pier number 1, and we have a considerable lot hauled up on the Finger Pier. We had to try to salvage to do the best we could with it. But all around there, some fellas have picked up a considerable lot and trucked away, hauled it up along the waterfront. And there's a bit picked up down here, but that's about all of it. I would say now there's quite a lot of it gone to sea.
Getting back to the gear that's been lost, would you say that the number of engines and actual gear like moorings and traps, this sort of thing, amounted to very much? Would you be able to make a rough guess?
Well, I would say that's offhand that St. John's damage, as fishermen of St. John's, would go in the vicinity of $100,000, probably to $120,000.
There's a second aspect of the problem, and that is that the individual fishermen themselves suffered individual losses. Now, this is really a provincial responsibility, and in the normal course of events, if this is widespread across the province, the government of Newfoundland can approach the federal government to assist them in rehabilitating, as it were, or getting the fishermen back on their feet. In other words, compensating them for their loss of equipment and gear. Now, in the case of Petty Harbour, these two problems are much closer related than they are in some of the other communities, because the matter of their individual stages, as opposed to the idea of a community stage, which is what the federal government would probably like to do, is something that will have to be discussed between the officials of the various governments and the fishermen themselves. And I think it would be pointless for the government to sit down in a room and come up with a plan and then announce it. I think the most successful way to cope with this very serious problem in Petty Harbour is for the fishermen and the officials to work together to come up with the right kind of facilities and the right kind of design because many of the fishermen in Petty Harbour, and indeed many of the other communities that were affected, are really very strong individualists, and they are used to having their own little stage and working from this. The federal government would rather provide more modern and what they feel more adequate facilities, but at the same time they must respect the individual wishes of the fishermen. So this is going to be a problem, but I've been talking to Mr. Whitten and the other fishermen, and I'm quite sure that these men, working with the officials of the Department of Fisheries, both federal and provincial, will come up with a way to compensate these men and get them back fishing.